Welcome back to another episode of The Whole Lawyer. For those who don't know, my name is Tonée Earle, and I am one of your hosts on this podcast. I am so excited to be here to talk to you about my experiences as a lawyer on this solo episode. So let's get into it. Today, I wanted to talk to you about my experience becoming a lawyer and dealing with imposter syndrome. There are only about 5% of African Americans in this field. That has honestly been the number for a very, very long time. For as long as I've been trying to get to the field, that has been the percent. And there's only about, I think, 2.5% of us are Black women. And so it's very easy to be in this field and feel like you don't belong. It's very easy to go through the motions of seeing people who do not look like you in court, seeing people who do not look like you in the jury box, seeing people who do not look like you as your clients, especially depending on the field that you're in, and think maybe this isn't the space for me. And I think a moment where I felt like the biggest imposter was when I was in my first job at the DC Affordable Law Firm. And during that time, it's such a great experience because it throws you right into trial work. It teaches you, I think we spent like maybe a month or like a month and a half just being trained in the topics in the practice areas that we were going to be practicing in. And so for me, that was family law and probate law. And we're just spending that time learning. And then after that month, you are just kind of thrown into the wolves. You get your first case or your first cases, or you're doing client intakes, you're taking on hearings, you're taking on trials, and you're just kind of thrown into it. And you do have these like supervisors, but they also have their own cases and they're kind of going through the motions of dealing with their workload. So you're really kind of learning on your own, but also being guided. And I'll never forget, it was probably my second or third time appearing in court with a case that I had. But because this was 2021, I graduated law school in 2021 and I passed the bar in 2021. So I was able to practice beginning kind of August of 2021 under the DCALF program. And so in that time, it's COVID. And so my first few hearings were actually via Zoom, they were online. But I finally get to a point where I have an in-person hearing at DC Superior Court, and I'm nervous. I am so nervous, but I've always been taught as a Black woman that you just kind of have to carry your confidence. You have to recognize that the worst you can do is fail. That's the worst you can do. You can't do anything worse than that. And failure doesn't have to be some big hoopla. Failure can mean a lot of things. It can be a lesson learned. It can be a blessing, right? It can mean that's just not that it's not the time for you to take on that season. And so understanding that failure is the lowest I can go, I oftentimes carry kind of an armor of confidence when I go into things that maybe I feel ill experienced or I feel like I shouldn't be there. And that's not really my imposter syndrome. That's just recognizing that in this space, there's people who've been doing this for 5, 10, 15 years, and they just have a wealth of knowledge that I don't have yet because a lot of that knowledge comes from experience. And so I'm in this courthouse and I'm waiting for my client. And mind you, I am dressed like I'm dressed really well. And, I was feeling really good about myself. And I'm sitting on a bench and out comes this, older white man. I'm not going to say he was like super old, like not my grandpa's age, but he was older than me. Like I'd give him like 40s, 50s at the time. And he walks up to me, he sits down next to me, and he just starts talking to me about a case. He's just like, "How you feeling today?" And I'm not thinking anything of it. I'm thinking, "Oh, I guess this is just how, counsel talks to each other when we're waiting for our case to start." And he asked me a question, and I'm just like, "I don't know the answer to that question." And he's like, "You're not my client?" And I immediately was just like my heart sank. I felt like I must have looked like the most inexperienced criminal person in that courtroom for this man to think that me being dressed as I am with my briefcase and my files, that I was his client. And there was a few lessons that came from that experience. One, I learned I need to figure out what my client looks like before I walk into the courthouse to represent them. And I gave him grace because I recognized that we were in COVID era. And so a lot of things were happening over the phone. And a lot of the times, the first time you were meeting somebody was to represent them at court. So I gave that man grace. I really internalized that. I really sat there and thought, how did this happen to me? How did I get to a space where I spent 4 years working my butt off in law school, not to toot my own horn, but I got 4.0 my second semester in law school, okay? I graduated top 5% of my class. I graduated magna cum laude. I did pretty well for myself in law school. To get to this point where I then now go on to study for the bar while working part-time, pass my first time, and get a high enough score where I can waive into any UBE jurisdiction. And I'm going to toot just a little bit. Because to do all of that, then get in this really great fellowship program and be mistaken for a criminal defendant, it just hurt my heart. It hurt my heart. And I politely told him, "No, I'm not your client." And that kind of weighed on me for the rest of the day. That really made me sit and think, "Damn, am I supposed to be here?" And obviously, I go about my day. My client shows, I go to court, I handle my business, and I actually do quite well for that to be like my first in-person hearing. But I never let go of how I felt when that person mistook me for being the defendant. And honestly, in my time in law, I wasn't really able to let that go. Because after I had left DeKalb, that was not the last time that I was ever mistaken for being the defendant when I was the counsel. I had later went on to a personal injury firm where I was following, kind of shadowing my supervisor around to, different courts in Virginia to see how he took on, cases and how he dealt with his hearings in the workers' comp world. And I lied to you not. Every time we walked into one of those buildings, I was with a man who was clearly well known by the staff, by the bailiffs, by the judges. He'd clearly been practicing, I think, like 20, 30 years. So obviously he was well known. But me being next to him, I was always mistaken as his client. It was like, it would baffle them when I would say, "Oh, no, I'm actually co-counsel," or "I'm actually a staff attorney." It would baffle people to hear this. And and it's crazy because even in today's world where I no longer live in the DMV, I now live in Arizona, I still kind of get that ooh ah experience when people hear I'm a lawyer. And I've had to really struggle with that. I've had to struggle with, is that a me problem or is that a them problem? And I think I've come to the conclusion that it's a them problem, okay? It's a them problem because the society that we are in makes it so hard for people like me to be in this space. It makes it so hard for people to believe that people who look like me can get into law school, can do well in law school, can graduate law school, can pass the bar, can get a job as a lawyer or an attorney and do well. And I want to encourage in this moment anybody who is thinking of going to law school, has been trying to get to law school and hasn't gotten in, is going through law school right now. You're getting C's, maybe you're getting D's, you're just struggling. The process is not supposed to be easy. They made it that way. It's made that way. Just look at Kim Kardashian. This is a person who's probably had things handed to her all her life. And I'm not going to say she's not a hard worker, but we know what her momager did. She built up a celebrity for herself where I believe that, she hasn't really had to work that hard at things. She is Kim Kardashian. People want her in her designs. People want her in her branding, in their branding. They want her to market things. She's been able to sell a $1 million brand because of who she is and not necessarily what she's done. And that's okay. There's no harm in that. But then she decided to take on something like becoming a lawyer like her father, which I think was actually admirable. And I think had she actually have went to law school and studied under actual lawyers and legal professors and people who, are paid to create the next generation of lawyers, I think she probably could have passed the bar and been a great lawyer. But the thing is, I think she thought money could have bought her that. And the reality of it is, the only way to get through what society has created in the path to become a lawyer is to work hard. is to study, is to attend office hours, is to network, is to learn case law, is to ask the hard questions. One of the things I see my bar students or the students I mentor do a lot of times is they will hear something knowing they don't even understand what it means and not ask follow-up questions. But I say all of this to say that this field is not an easy field to get through. It's not. It's supposed to be hard. And so because we are only at 5%, because only 5% of us make up this field, it's important now more than ever that you push past the fear of failure. You push past the imposter syndrome because you do belong here. We have to get to a point where there are so many of us in this field that it's no longer 5%. It's 25%. It's 35%. It's no longer, "Oh, you're a lawyer." It's, "Oh, great, you're a lawyer," right? It's comfortable to them to hear a Black person or somebody who looks like me say that they're a lawyer. Now, I am gonna leave you with this. It is lonely in this field, okay? Especially if you're not in a place where there are already a lot of people who look like you. I am so thankful for the fact that I was able to go to a historically Black university slash college in UDC law, and I met some phenomenal people there. It was so refreshing to see so many people who looked like me because I didn't have to deal with imposter syndrome. I was able to feel like, yes, I belong. But when you get into the field, no matter what school you go to, when you get into the field, that starts dwindling away. The populace of people who look like you starts to fade out and you can easily become the one. In my current law firm, I am one of three, where there are about 30 lawyers in all. So I credit that to the fact that I live in a city that I think there's about 2% of us overall. So having 3 attorneys in my office is actually pretty cool. Um, but it's lonely. It's lonely when you get to this space, especially when I've gone to court, a bunch of times out here, and I am always typically the only Black person in the courtroom to the point where I'm still working in nonprofit. I'm still helping low income persons, but 9 times out of 10, my client is not a person of color. Or they are not a Black person. I'll say that. They are either usually Caucasian or Hispanic. And again, there is no harm in that. I want to help people from all backgrounds, but it's easy to be in a space where you can quickly identify you don't look like. And I think race plays a very big role about how Black people see themselves in the communities that they're in. And when you don't see yourself with the rest of the people in your world, the rest of your people at work, it is easy to start thinking, do I belong here? Particularly when we have seen the degradation of DEI. I mean, DEI being considered this uh, free pass to get a job for people of color was honestly so heartbreaking. And I can't lie. When DEI was a when DEI first came out and they were hiring people and you were seeing Black people getting more jobs, there was a thought of me that wondered, was I just a DEI hire? Especially when, again, I was the only person who looked like me there. And I constantly had to tell myself, no, I had the GPA. No, I had the letters of recommendation. No, I have this, I have that. I am worth being here. But with every job I got, each time I would see myself and not anybody else who looked like myself, it became kind of hard to believe that I was here because of merit and not because of quota. And so I just want to encourage people that I know people who look like me, we struggle with that. We struggle with that. I want to tell you one more story as to how bad I struggle with that, and then leave you with some words of encouragement. And this story hems on why I went to law school in the first place. it was always, said I was going to go to law school. I was going to go to law school. I was going to go to law school. I studied law and American civilization at Towson University. I graduated. I went on to get my paralegal studies master's at George Washington University. And I was kind of like tiptoeing my way into law school because fear kept me out. Fear kept me from wanting to go. I didn't know if I would make it. I didn't know if I would hack it. And to be completely honest, I had people who I would call mentors tell me I wouldn't like it. So I was very hesitant to get into law school and to go to law school. But one day in Maryland, I was leaving from my ophthalmologist, I think is the eye doctor's office in Howard County, driving my little beige Honda Accord at the time. And I believe this was in either late 2016 or early 2017 because I got into law school late 2017. I was leaving Howard County. I was in my little beige Honda Accord. I think it was like a 2006. It had a little Georgetown, Washington sticker on the back, a little bumper sticker. And it was cute. And I was pulled over by a cop. I was pulled over as we were leaving from the red light. So I knew I wasn't speeding. I knew I hadn't done a legal lane change or anything like that. And I was really baffled at why I was being pulled over. And I'm waiting in the car and I'm, just kind of getting my wallet together. I'm getting my ID out, got my registration ready to go. And I'm just kind of waiting for the officer to get out of the car, come ask me for my license and registration. A couple of minutes go by and I look through my, rear view window and I see, okay, two more cop cars popping up. Okay, bet. I'm still not sure what's going on, but I'm thinking maybe this is like a case of mistaken identity. I'll clear it up real quick. A few more minutes pass by. 3 more cop cars roll up. 6 cop cars are behind my car. Now, so many things were flashing in my head at this time because in this day and age, Black people were getting killed by the cops, it seemed like every other day. And I did not want to be another RIP in the national spotlight. So I'm really trying to figure out what could I have done. I'm really hoping the cops would come to the window. I'm wondering, should I get out the door? Should I get outside my car? Should I see what's wrong? Should I wave a white flag? I don't know what to do. Finally, the cop comes to the window. It's a white lady cop. She got her hand on her holster. And she walks up, hey, license and registration, please. I hand her what I had in my hand. She's like, do you know why I pulled you over? And I said, I do not know why you pulled me over. And she says, is this car yours? And I said, yes, this is my car. You'll see on the registration. That's my name. And she says, well, do you want to tell me why the license plates don't match the license on your registration? And I'm like, I don't know. At this point, I'm thinking this is still harmless. I haven't killed anybody. I haven't, you don't have nothing on me. You don't know who I am for real. I know I'm not popping up in your system because I got a clean record. So I'm thinking we still just trying to get to the bottom of what's happening right now. I say, oh, no, I don't know. At this time, I didn't even know what my license plate said. And so this is a PSA that if you don't know what your license plate's number is, please go and look at that bad boy because you could be in this similar situation. But anyway, she says, step out the car. Step out the car and I'll show you. She takes me to the front of my car. I lie to you not. I still don't know what my license plate was that day, but I knew those plates on that car of mine were not mine. They were dingy. They were dirty. I think they had like a pelican on it. I knew mine didn't at least have a pelican on it. And I was like, oh yeah, those are not my plates. And she's like, okay, so this car is stolen. And I said, no. The registration has the VIN number that's in the car. I'm trying to figure out how we're getting to the vehicle stolen and not the license plates were stolen or switched or whatever. She says, I'm going to have to put you in handcuffs while we figure this out. Y'all, that was my first time in handcuffs ever in my life. I knew not what to do. I was scared. I started bawling my eyes out. I didn't know my Fourth Amendment rights at all. I did not know anything. I couldn't even figure out what to do. I start saying in the car with my hands behind my back, no, I'm like, I'm getting my master's at George Washington. I graduated from Towson. My parents live here. I have a brother. I have a sister. I'm just spitting out all these facts about me to just try to humanize myself, to try to get the police officers to see I'm not a criminal. I'm not a criminal. They sat me in the back of the police car and they rummaged through my car And y'all, I think this was like the icing on the cake to the story because they rummage through my car and they go in my purse. And in my purse, they find some Honduran dollar bills. Y'all, I had literally got back from a not literally got back. I had traveled to Honduras in 2014 for Students Helping Honduras. Shout out to Students Helping Honduras and Shin Fujiyama and all the good things that they're doing. I went to Honduras. My name is on a library out there, and it was a great experience. I definitely recommend it if it's at your college. Anyway, I went there and I obviously had to use Honduran money to purchase stuff. So I had a little left over that I saved as a souvenir. I just never got around to taking it out of my wallet. So it was in my wallet and they're like, "Are you dealing in drugs?" And I'm like, "Now, how the heck would you get the drugs through Honduras? It was like $3 in American cash that was in my purse in Honduran money, but whatever." Along with the Honduran money, they also found a shell casing to a bullet from when I went to the gun range, which is why I don't like going to the gun range now, because not only does it just seem weird to be in a space where people are just shooting guns willy-nilly, you're not in a protected area or anything. I just feel like at any point someone could turn to you and just go pow pow if they wanted to, because they are not checking your mental health. Again, neither here nor there. But they found this shell casing in my purse. And they're like, "Oh, you must be involved with gangs. You must be doing drugs, blah, 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 blah." I'm crying even more now. I'm trying to humanize myself even more now. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. Answering all their questions. Where do I live? Blah, 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 blah. There was one question that the officer said that stood out to me. And I couldn't respond to it in that time because I couldn't, really understand what he was asking me when he asked me that. But he said, "If we run these plates, we better not find your prints." And I'm like, I've never touched those plates. I didn't even know those plates were on my car. That's my car. They said, "All right, we're not going to take you to jail. We're going to do some more investigative work." Still treating me like a criminal, though not taking me to jail. I'm still in handcuffs. They said, "I'm going to drop you off at the nearest mall." At that time, it was the Columbia Mall. And they towed my car to an impound lot. Even though I explained to them that my father owns his home and we could just park it in the garage. Um, and of course, in all this commotion, my phone dies. So, they dropped me off at the mall. I don't have anything. I actually had to ask if the Best Buy would let me if the Best Buy would just let me use a charger to charge my phone because I couldn't purchase it because I didn't have my money because my purse was in my car. Um, and so I call my dad, they come and get me, and yada yada yada. And basically, the reason why that question that he asked me about the prince really stood out to me when I sat and contemplated on that situation, because that was traumatizing. I thought about that situation for years after it happened because it was just very scary to be in a space where you didn't do anything wrong, but these people are treating you like you did something wrong and you have no knowledge of the law to be able to protect you. And so that is the reason why I said I can no longer let fear keep me from going to law school. I have to be able to know how to show up in the world in a way that makes me fully protected. I have to be able to help those who wouldn't have the access to do what I did and go to law school and become a lawyer by being the person to make that sacrifice. And that's what I did. That's what I did. And so I say all of that to say, if you are struggling with being in law school, if you are struggling with applying to law school, if you are thinking, law school wouldn't be for you, but you have this passion, you have this fire for wanting to be in law school, wanting to know more about the law, I say go for it. Do not let fear keep you from changing the world in the ways you hope to change the world. And don't let don't wait until you are in a near-death experience or being wrongfully accused for something you didn't do before you make that step as well, because there are people waiting for you who need you in this field. There are so many people out there who need your perspective, who need your experiences, who need to see you try, fail, try again, and succeed so that they know that they can do it too. Thank you all for joining me on this episode of the Whole Lawyer Podcast. It was a pleasure having this conversation, and I hope I at least parted some wisdom into somebody today. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all the things for the podcast so that you can stay in the know with the conversations that we're having on the Whole Lawyer. See you next time.